Hello, and welcome to And the Runner-Up Is. This week on the show, we'll travel back in time to the 58th Academy Awards, which awarded the films of 1985. Peter Weir took the familiar crime thriller genre and formed an intelligent film about cultural differences in Witness. The film was another runaway success for star Harrison Ford, and remained a major player through the entirety of awards season. But despite two major wins at the Oscars, Witness was not able to beat the much more traditional and epic Out of Africa when it came to Best Picture. So why did Witness come up short at the end? And why am I not talking about The Color Purple as the runner-up? We'll explore all this and more as we discuss how the Oscar almost went to Witness. Welcome back to And the Runner-Up Is. I'm your host, Kevin Jacobson, and today I have the return of the first ever guest on this show. Back before it was even called And the Runner-Up Is. That's how long ago this was. That was when it was called The Oscar Almost Went To. So anyway, you last heard him talking about 3 billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri, that old thing, 33 years ago. And now I have back again my partner in crime, Sebastian Gronback.
Hello.
Hi.
How's it going?
I'm great. Are you excited to talk about 1985?
This is an interesting year for a few reasons.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it definitely feels like kind of a midway point in the sense that, like, it feels like we're shifting into a different era. Because I feel like the films that are represented here and in the next several years prior to this feel like a certain sort of thing, and then we start to move into something new in the 90s and 2000s.
That's fair. Yeah, this is a good transition point.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're going to be talking about today might be controversial because a lot of people want us to talk about The Color Purple, which received 11 nominations, but 0 wins. But instead we're going to be talking about Witness. And I will explain why we aren't talking about The Color Purple in the next segment when we get to Oscar talk.
But first.
Yes, but first.
Let's talk
Witness. Okay, so Witness is a crime thriller about an Amish mother and son, Rachel and Samuel, who are heading to Baltimore to visit her sister. But their trip is postponed after the son witnesses a murder in a Philadelphia bathroom. So they meet Detective John Book, who realizes that the perpetrator is a member of his own police department. And when the department learns of his investigation, they start to go after him, eventually wound him, which forces him to move to Amish country with Rachel and Samuel to recover from his wound and stay undetected. And from there, John learns about the simplicity of the Amish customs and develops a bit of a connection with Rachel. So the film was directed by the great Peter Weir, with an original screenplay by Earl W. Wallace and William Kelly, who also have a story credit with Pamela Wallace. It stars Harrison Ford as John Book, Kelly McGillis as Rachel, Lucas Haas as Samuel, Danny Glover as the corrupt cop James McPhee, Joseph Summer, Jan Reeves, Alexander Gundove, Patty Lupone, and a very special actor in his first film role, but I'm sure we'll get to that later. Witness made $68 million at the box office and was number 8 of 1985, so a big hit. It was nominated for 8 Academy Awards and won 2, but not Best Picture. Okay, let's get into it. Let's talk Witness. What are your thoughts?
All right. Witness is good.
The end.
The end. No, we had watched The Fugitive a few weeks back now.
Yes, when we were doing 93.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, I adored The Fugitive. It was my first time seeing it, and it was such a great film. It's like this crazy blockbuster that somehow managed to make it into the Oscar race. And I was kind of expecting something kind of similar here, with this film, it's Harrison Ford, it's a crime thriller, but this is a pretty subdued movie. It's very quiet, but it's very meditative about it. I think the movie looks really good, and I think this is a great piece of Harrison Ford's filmography. This is his only Oscar nomination for Witness.
Yeah.
And I think he does deserve the nomination here. He does a really good job at transitioning from a big city cop into this guy who's being brought into this Amish community. Both himself and the community around him a little reluctant about it at first. And his chemistry with Kelly McGillis is really good. This is one of her earliest roles. She did this before she broke out in Top Gun.
That's right.
And I think their chemistry, their relationship together is great, I don't think this movie is as good as The Fugitive, but I love The Fugitive.
Few things can be in your eyes.
Mm-hmm. But I think it's still a really solid thriller, and I think it's one of the better films nominated for Best Picture this year.
Well, that is very, very true. I agree. It's a very up and down year that I'm excited to get into. So yes, I will agree that Witness is a very good film by Peter Weir, and I think he manages to subvert maybe some expectations of what the film is by kind of having all the, say, those crime thriller elements in the beginning, like 20 to 30 minutes or so. But then in the very long middle, I think we get a very interesting, quiet Amish segment that I found to actually be the best part of the film, despite not really being like what was advertised by any means. I think, like you said, if you see the concept, you read it and you think it's going to be something, you think it might be something like The Fugitive, then you might be a little disappointed by some of the middle, unless, you can kind of connect with the evolution that Detective John Book goes on, which, by the way, is a great name.
It's such a solid name. Like, if you're going to do a thriller and you're going to have this guy on the run and, he's an ace detective, you want a guy named John Book.
Are you disappointed that the movie is not called Book?
A little bit. What I find kind of interesting, too, is that, like, the name John Book, like, it makes sense it sounds like a Philly detective, but it also does kind of sound like an Amish kind of name, too.
Yeah,
like, you can imagine a guy named John Book working on a barn.
Yes. It's just kind of generic and almost biblical in a way.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
You can see it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The Book of John, if it were. So let's talk about kind of the beginning portion of this film and whether you were drawn in by the atmosphere overall, which I think, you hear the musical score.
It's very 80s.
Which is very 80s. Mm-hmm. And I think you probably felt like you understood what the film was going to be.
Yeah.
What do you make of the beginning? You think it sets things up well?
The beginning is really good, and I think a lot of that is thanks to the performances of Kelly McGillis and an early role for Lucas Haas, who you see nowadays as a pretty prominent character actor.
Right.
And he does such a great job as the kid. He's really solid throughout the entire movie, but it's really that beginning when he witnesses the murder in the bathroom. When he witnesses, he is the titular witness.
He's the titular role.
Yep. And he's great at really conveying like the horror of like being this kid who grew up in Amish country and like
who doesn't know any better.
Their dedication to nonviolence. So to really see this sort of thing and the very first time he ever leaves Amish country is like it's a real shock.
Yeah, and I imagine quite traumatizing.
Mm-hmm.
And especially dealing afterwards with when he gets back to his home and he's like dealing with the gun and everything. It's just all very, what I'm saying is I hope he's okay in his adulthood.
Yeah. It is it's a tale of it is Samuel's story and it's also John Book's story in the sense that both of them are learning about each other's worlds. Like Book is learning about this insular place that's really dedicated to nonviolence, and then Samuel really learns about the kind of violence that exists in the outside world.
In the quote-unquote real world.
Yeah.
Yes. outside the confines.
Among the English.
Oh, the English, which is kind of bandied about as a bit of like a muggle sort of thing. Yes, so I wanted to talk about Kelly McGillis because I do agree that I think she gives a great performance, and it's not a role that necessarily needed to be as great as it is, and I think she elevates the material by being so expressive, I think, with her face, which she has to do throughout the film because she is still a very quiet and humble woman.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, and she is experiencing all these things, and I think she reflects all of the dangers around her very well, and her journey is one of the most interesting as well, in addition to Samuel and John.
She is not nominated for this performance, which I think is a bummer, because I think it's great.
She was nominated for a Golden Globe, but she was sadly snubbed, so she was definitely in the mix, but was overlooked.
Yeah.
So I don't know exactly why, but yeah, we'll get into that interesting supporting race later. Let's talk about how it does take that turn into becoming more of the quiet Amish lifestyle.
Yeah.
Did you like the transition? Did you think it was awkward?
I really don't think it's an awkward transition. I think this movie has such a great structure. Like, it's a really solid foundation. And the fact that this film won editing, really harkens to that.
Yep.
You know, and it does such a good job at not like screeching and like making an immediate left turn into the Amish thing, but it really eases you in. You have that period after Book's been found out that he's investigating the stuff that the lieutenant is doing. He gets shot, and when he's brought into Amish country, you have this kind of period where he's recovering from being shot, and that's kind of where the film transitions from being this kind of hard-boiled thriller into this Amish drama.
I like it. Yes, I agree. And I think the bubbling tension of romance between John and Rachel is some of the hottest stuff I've seen in a film.
It is surprisingly steamy.
Yes, it's very steamy, and that's what happens when you have a repressed community, you know, kind of exploring some things that are very real and natural. So yeah, I love that. I love all of I think they have actually really fantastic chemistry, Harrison Ford and Kelly McGillis.
There's the scene in the barn when he's firing up the car, trying to get it to work because he crashed his car after being lost of blood.
Yeah.
Or however you say that.
Lost of blood. So poetic.
Yes. And he turns the radio on, and he dances with Kelly McGillis in the barn. And I think that might be some of my favorite work I've ever seen Harrison Ford do.
Yes. He is so charming and just attractive in that entire scene.
Yeah.
And just confident and also very respectful of her as well.
Yeah.
Which I found to be very refreshing. And I had been reading about how this film had kind of been discussed back and forth between producers and writers and directors about how much to make this a love story, which the producers were really hoping that they could craft this into a really steamy love story. And I think it does have those bones there, but it's interesting to me that never fully gets explored in a way that you think it might.
Yeah, and I think that's super interesting because we do have other Amish people in the story. We have her father, played by John Rubes, and we have the Daniel, who is another Amish person who also likes Rachel.
Yes.
So, and you know, there's a little bit of tension there in that community at the beginning, but Rachel does like a really good job at helping to bring John Book like into the community.
Yes, and she also knows how to handle all of the different people in her life and kind of try to convince them that he's this good guy who needs to be here and all that, and is very helpful and is a great carpenter. And,
yeah. The father, Eli, I really liked a lot. I thought that was a really good character. And I feel like in a current day version of doing this movie, you make him like a real hard bad guy. You know, like, oh, he's got to get out of here because he's
not like us.
Yeah. But the way that he starts to accept and help Book as the movie goes on is really interesting. And it's through him that you learn a lot about the Amish people, because he talks to Samuel in that section about the gun and about violence and stuff like that. And I think that's also one of the best parts of the movie.
I agree. Very tenderly handled. Very smartly handled. It's a smart movie, surprisingly so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about the surprise person who's in this film.
All right.
It's Viggo. Viggo Mortensen.
This is the film debut of Viggo Mortensen.
Little baby Viggo. With that smile.
We did not know this going into the film.
No.
But we're watching the scene where they're raising the barn, and who do we see giving a hand to old Harrison Ford? But it's our friend Viggo Mortensen.
Yeah, and he's just having a great time. I don't even know if he has any lines at all, but you can just see him being so charming and just having a great time in the background.
We can we can talk a little bit about it more in a later section, but there are a lot of people that we know nowadays that had their first big works in this year, and Viggo is just one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. He's just kind of an elevated background extra, more or less.
He plays an Amish person named Moses.
There you go.
Listed in the credits.
There you go. I don't know if we ever get his name in the film.
Well, but you got it in the credits.
Well, yeah. A really good eye on the part of Peter Weir or whoever casted him.
Mm-hmm. Can we talk about Peter Weir for a minute?
Okay.
Because he has a pretty big career throughout the 80s and 90s, and then in a little bit of the 2000s. He does Dead Poets Society.
Of course.
Which I believe was also Oscar nominated.
Yeah, Best Picture, 89.
Mm-hmm. And The Truman Show.
Yes.
Which is also a big deal as well.
Yes.
So
and Master and Commander in 2003.
Mm-hmm. So he's pretty familiar with being the Oscars, and I think this is one of his
first.
This is his first Best Picture nomination.
Yep.
Yeah, that's just interesting.
Yeah, so it's definitely the start of his track as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, what else? Well, I really like how there's this one scene in which John is integrated into the community pretty fully at this point with the hat and the suit, and he just looks great, and he's blended in and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But they are traveling in a pack together, and they kind of happen upon the local bullies, or whatever you want to call them.
They're just some 80s punks.
80s punk kids, yeah, basically. And they start to antagonize the Amish, as they are wont to do. And I really like how the Amish kind of explain to him how, the best way to just do this is to be nonviolent and to ignore them, even if they're taunting them openly. Meanwhile, John just goes over and straight up punches one of them.
Yep. It is a very violent looking punch, which is very surprising.
Very sudden in a middle portion that's not very violent at all.
Yeah.
It certainly comes like, wow.
Because and I think it's such a great choice to do, because of that fact that you've spent so much time in the Amish country with these people that this violence that normally will fit in with any kind of crime thriller is,
or like the beginning of this film,
is that much more shocking after having had this long period of peace, you know?
And it's a good character, dichotomy that's happening there. And what I find interesting is that as it gets towards the end, I got this sense that neither of them are particularly going to change that much upon, John being in this community.
Mm-hmm.
I like that it's not this thing where suddenly they're different people by the end of it.
Yeah.
Because it really ends with this sense of they came together for this one thing, but that doesn't mean they're just going to integrate and be happily ever after, or that the Amish people are suddenly going to change their ways.
Yeah, exactly.
It leaves both. It gives both of them some dignity, I suppose, to their characters.
Yeah. As it's explained in the beginning of the film, John Book doesn't have a wife. He doesn't have any kids. So you could see a different version of this movie having the ending be like, well, we caught the bad guy, and well, I guess I'm more comfortable. I'm going to stay here with the Amish people. And that's the end of the movie.
And then it would kind of turn into the same narrative that we saw with things like Dances with Wolves almost, and Avatar, I suppose.
Yeah.
Where you have like this person from the city who moves into this more, native type of community. And then he's like, oh, well, the city people are wrong and this is the right way to live and I'm going to live among you forever now.
Yeah.
Instead, it's just, I think it's very much more realistic, I suppose.
Yeah.
And it doesn't go for that cheap sense of like, oh, now I'm with you now.
Yeah. What it establishes, which I think is the best way to go about it, is the fact that, the case is done and he heads back and they just have respect and understanding for each other.
Right.
And that's important.
Yes.
It's important to have respect and understanding for other cultures.
Exactly. So in that way, it is a very smart take on this. And I think it easily could have gone wrong in different hands, in weaker hands. And he makes it into a very smart and thoughtful film, I think, that explores all those themes.
Do we have any thoughts about the villains, quote unquote, in this film? I don't know if it's quote unquote. It's just probably regular villains.
Regular quote.
Yes, the police chief and Lieutenant McPhee, as played by Danny Glover, in his first of 2 Best Picture nominated films this year.
Yes, first of 2 bad guys in Best Picture nominees.
Woof.
Yeah. Well, they're obviously more two-dimensional than every other character.
Yeah.
Because I think it's kind of necessary in some ways.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't have like a huge problem either way.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the weakest element of this story, honestly, because it's kind of generic.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it's kind of this case of corrupt cops who look after each other. It's the kind of thing we've seen in a lot of movies.
Yeah.
So, yeah. When it gets to the end, I do think that the final sequence is quite thrilling and well shot.
It's very exciting.
And well paced, well edited.
And it has what I consider now to be one of my favorite movie kills, which is when Harrison Ford buries that guy in corn.
Yes. That's pretty epic and very resourceful.
Yeah.
And really goes to show how John Book has learned to use what's around him to kill people.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But I mean, like, the thing, you're not going to see that in every movie. I don't know if you're going to see that in
any other movie.
Yeah. You name me how many other films have a scene where a guy is killed by being crushed with corn.
I'm sure someone's going to come up with something in my mentions.
Please, if you know another film where someone is crushed in a silo of corn, please tweet it at the account so I can watch that movie as well.
Yes. Good.
And complete my letterboxed list of movies where people are killed by being crushed by tons of corn.
Killed by killer corn.
Boy.
Oh, boy.
What about Attack of the Killer Tomatoes? There's probably some killer corn in there, unless it's all tomatoes.
Sausage Party? I don't know. I don't know where to go from here.
All right.
You backed me into a corner.
I do really like the ending of this film. On top of the corn, I really like how Harrison Ford does kill the other 2 guys, but he has the last guy, the police chief, and it isn't him that knows how to beat it. It's Eli, who has told the young boy about nonviolence and realizes that the best way to stop the chief of police is to ring the bell and bring all of the Amish to the area.
Yeah.
So that they can all be
witnesses.
Yes.
It all comes full circle.
It all comes full circle, and that's what I call good screenwriting.
Exactly.
You know how good screenwriting it is?
How good?
It is Academy Award-winning screenwriting.
That's right. And great editing, too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really do like the ending, even though, like I said, I don't love the sort of crime thriller aspect as much as the middle portion. I do think it's a fitting conclusion and a very interesting, almost ambiguous-ish sort of ending where that's been taken care of and they're going to go their separate ways. And there is that mutual understanding. It basically ends on essentially what is just like a handshake. Like, okay, we went through this experience and now we're going to go back to our lives.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think the ending is quite strong.
Yeah.
I know some people had issues with it, but
I like it a lot,
Yeah.
and I think my favorite thing is they're driving he's driving in his car down the road back to the English, and Daniel just gives him a little wave.
yeah.
And it is the last line of the film, I think, that Eli has when he tells John Book to be careful out there among those English.
Yes, which is really a symbol that he is basically an honorary Amishman.
Yeah.
Which is really nice.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes. I love Harrison Ford's performance. Let me just reinforce that.
Mm-hmm.
I think he is really leaning into a lot of what he does best, which is kind of everyman sorts of things, but also bewilderment at the world around him.
Mm-hmm.
Just being like, what the hell? That sort of thing.
This is definitely one of his most everyman performances,
Yeah.
because he has a lot of these kind of thriller types of movies, especially in the 80s and 90s. But in a lot of them, he's really like super defying the odds very frequently, especially in a movie like The Fugitive. But
yes.
but here he's really like on his toes a lot of the time.
Yes, which is a refreshing protagonist to follow, I think, because he is definitely flawed and he doesn't know how to get out of every jam.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really interesting. He is very much an everyman, but I think it's also kind of a departure in the fact that it's a character that I think he had to work his way into.
Yeah,
a little stronger than some of the blockbusters that he was just coming off of, like Star Wars and Indiana Jones.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he does live up to the task and create a really compelling character, and it's one of my favorite performances he's ever given.
Yeah, unless I'm mistaken, I believe this was one of his first, like, I don't know how to say it, like a drama, like a regular...
Like, take me seriously.
Like a regular drama after having done so many, like, sci-fi and action films,
For sure.
Yeah.
It's adult,
Yeah. And let us not forget the fact that Patti LuPone is in this film.
She is in this film, and she's crabby.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's perfect.
There you go.
What can you say?
Yeah, I think this is a good movie. It does win the most Oscars for a non-Best Picture winner this year.
True, tied with Cocoon.
Cocoon.
Yes.
Among the Best Picture nominees,
yes,
which we'll talk about in just a minute.
Oh, yes.
But I think it is one of the most interesting films in the lineup, but it did not win because it lost to another film.
Yes, correct.
We are
you taking over my show?
No, sorry. Okay.
Because that's my line.
I know. I listen every week, so I'm just reciting what I hear all the time.
Thank you. We've reached that portion. Yes. So I will say to anyone who loves Harrison Ford but hasn't seen this, I will say this is a definitive film for him that you need to watch.
It's
quintessential Harrison Ford here.
This is Harrison Ford's Academy Award nominated performance, and I think
singular nomination.
This is it.
This is it.
So check it out. I mean, like everybody's seen Star Wars, everybody's seen Indiana Jones, everybody should still see The Fugitive, but you should also see Witness.
Yeah.
And Morning Glory with Rachel McAdams.
Sure.
And somebody else.
Okay. Well, when we come back, we will be. You want to do the line?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
We will be talking about why Witness lost Best Picture to a little film called Out of Africa.
Oh, that's great.
Thanks.
Hey, man.
They didn't know there was a witness.
Carter didn't tell me about the eyewitness.
Yeah, Amish kid, 8 years old.
A man of force.
I'm a police officer, ma'am. I have to talk to the boy.
A woman of faith.
You don't understand. We have nothing to do with your laws.
Yes, I do. Your son's a material witness to a homicide.
Worlds apart.
Now you have a witness.
Yeah, now I got a witness.
John, what's going on, man? What is happening?
You said we would be safe in Philadelphia.
Well, I was wrong.
He left with the Amish woman, right?
If they find me, they find the boy.
You bring this man to our house with his gun of the hand. You bring fear to this house.
Everyone has an idea about you and the Englishman.
They're looking for you.
I have done nothing against the rule of the ordinance.
Nothing? Maybe not yet.
We know where you are.
Harrison Ford, and Kelly McGillis. Witness.
And we're back. So now, what? You looked like you were going to say the line.
No, you go ahead.
Okay. So now we are going to talk about why Witness lost Best Picture to a little movie called Out of Africa. So first, let's get into some nominations that Witness received. It received 8 Oscar nominations, including Best Picture, Best Director for Peter Weir, Best Actor for Harrison Ford, Best Original Screenplay, Best Art Direction, Best Cinematography, Best Film Editing, and Best Original Score, and it walked away with 2 of those, Original Screenplay and Film Editing, which are 2 of the best.
Mm-hmm.
So, before the Oscars, Witness won the WGA for Original Screenplay. Meanwhile, Out of Africa, interestingly enough, the only major precursor it won was the Golden Globe for Drama, which is a good one to win, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But it was the only one.
Yeah.
So that's quite interesting because the rest of the precursors went to all kinds of different movies, including The Color Purple,
which we will definitely get into.
Yes. So let's first just talk about why Out of Africa was our big sweeping winner here.
This is precisely the kind of film that the Academy at the time would really want to reward. This film was nominated for how many categories?
11.
And it won
7?
Which is crazy.
Is it?
Oh,
why do you think it's crazy?
I don't think. Well, it's crazy by my standards because I don't think the movie's very good.
Oof.
Let's talk about Out of Africa, the film.
Okay. Well, you had never seen Out of Africa before this week. I had seen it a few months, well, maybe like 6 months ago, something like that, for the first time. And I did not want to rewatch it because it's long and it's slow and it doesn't have a lot of redeeming factors or rewatchability, in my opinion.
Okay. Out of Africa is 2 hours and 40 minutes, which is honestly about 20 minutes more than your average Marvel movie nowadays.
Sure. Okay.
But it feels like it's 4 hours long.
Yeah.
I find the film to be not very interesting. I think the performances here, I mean, Meryl Streep, Robert Redford, I mean...
solid as always.
Big marquee names.
Yeah.
But even they can't really save this film from how dull it is.
Yeah. I just think it's a really uninteresting narrative, despite Karen Blixen being what seems to be a very fascinating figure.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think the film necessarily lives up to that.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
I think it is very much a sleepy affair. And it just needs a little something extra that was just completely missing. It's just a big flat line throughout, I think.
Yeah, and I know it's definitely this film is 33 years old, Out of Africa.
Yes.
And it definitely comes from a different era.
It is very old school.
But this is like a white people problems kind of movie.
Yeah, including the fact that we are in Africa, but we are focusing on white people.
the rich white people. Robert Redford plays a big game hunter, which also wouldn't look great today.
Yeah.
You know.
Especially he's supposed to be like the big romantic lead.
Yeah. There's a lot about this movie that doesn't age well.
Yeah.
I'll tell you some things that do age well. The score here is great.
Yes.
The music in Out of Africa is wonderful.
The original score by John Barry is an all-time classic, despite my feelings, and a lot of people do feel very negatively about Out of Africa, but the one thing a lot of people can agree on is that score is so beautiful and iconic and used in a lot of montages, even at something like the Oscars, and for a reason, because it's so sweeping and epic, just like the film itself.
Additionally, the cinematography here also
gorgeous,
very, very, very good.
Yeah.
It's okay for like the first like hour or so, but I really do think that aerial sequence towards the end of the movie,
I remember that,
is insane.
Yeah.
It is so good, and it looks so great.
Yeah.
I really just wish that the narrative of the movie
Right.
was as good as the way that it looks and sounds, because it really isn't.
Right, exactly. That's exactly how I feel. And I'm pretty sure before you went to put it in, I told you that cinematography's great, the score is great. Good luck from there.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's basically what you got out of it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This film won 8 Oscars.
It won 8, yeah.
It won 8. It won for picture.
Yeah.
It won for director. It won for supporting actor Klaus Maria Brandauer, who plays Meryl's...
No.
No?
No, he did not win.
Oh. Okay.
Where did you get that information?
Uh-oh. I looked on the Wikipedia. Did I get it wrong? I probably did.
Yeah, he did not win.
Okay, then he won. Then this one's 7. I'm
Okay.
Okay, I'm done trying to do your job. It's very clear why I don't host this show.
It's okay. You're doing great.
Okay, and won a bunch of other ones too. Why don't you wanna?
It swept, basically, the whole race.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess this is a good transition point. Well, first of all, I'm just going to say, in regard to Witness, I don't know if it was ever necessarily in the Best Picture conversation, despite us saying that it's the runner-up.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason that I picked this, first, I'm going to just defend it over Prince's Honor and Kiss of the Spider-Woman.
Yes.
Both of which won 1 Oscar for acting.
Mm-hmm.
I think Witness winning original screenplay and film editing are 2 of the biggest indicators of success for the Oscars in terms of Best Picture, because it's all about the story itself.
Yeah.
You know, literally the story as written on the screen and the way that it is put together through the film editing.
Yeah.
So those are 2 very key factors, sometimes even more important than director, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So that is why it is above those 2 movies. Do you want to get into The Color Purple?
Yes, we should talk about The Color Purple.
Okay.
Which I think is honestly the second biggest movie of this year, even though Witness won 2,
right.
Because The Color Purple has a lot of nominations.
It has 11 nominations. It tied Out of Africa.
However, it has 0 wins.
0 wins. One of 2 movies to do that for 11 nominations.
Mm-hmm.
And that is very significant. That indicates a lot of respect for The Color Purple in all of its various technical nominations and acting, but not love.
Mm-hmm.
You don't walk away from the Oscars with 0 wins and say that you were necessarily loved by the Academy.
Right.
Yeah, despite how many nominations you receive, it's all about winning.
Yeah, even in the below the line categories and places where they could have rewarded The Color Purple, they didn't do it.
Yeah. I wanted to do a little bit of an experimental thing here because I want to further defend why I don't think The Color Purple was in the second position.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, first of all, because it did not receive a director nomination,
which is
for Steven Spielberg.
That is also insane.
Yeah. So to begin with, the combination of 0 wins plus a lack of a nomination for Steven Spielberg, I would have said that probably rules it out. Mm-hmm. But I also want to add on to the fact that if you look at each and every one of these nominations that The Color Purple received, I can think of probably 1 category out of those where it was even in second.
Mm-hmm.
And that 1 category is Best Actress for Whoopi Goldberg.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to go through each and every category here because I want to defend my case here.
All right.
So, outside of actress, we have supporting actress, where Margaret Avery and Oprah Winfrey are nominated for The Color Purple. Mm-hmm. Angelica Houston is the winner. Meg Tilly is also nominated for Agnes of God. She won the Golden Globe. I think she might have come closer, especially if people who loved The Color Purple, maybe they split their votes between the 2 of them. Because I don't know if there's one of them that's more obvious than the other to pick.
I'm not sure, because I think both Oprah Winfrey and Margaret Avery give really stellar performances in The Color Purple. So it is possible for some overlap there.
Right. So we go to adapted screenplay, where The Color Purple was nominated alongside Out of Africa, which is the winner, and Kiss of the Spider-Woman and Prizzi's Honor, and also The Trip to Bountiful. Prizzi's Honor won the WGA for Adapted, and Prizzi's Honor was also very much beloved within the industry at the time, and I think was probably second in that race.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. So we move on to art direction. Out of Africa, of course, wins that. The Color Purple is nominated. I am going to go out on a limb and say that Ran, I don't know how to pronounce it.
Ran.
Okay. That it wins art direction.
Yeah.
Because it's incredibly involved sets and beautiful color work.
The art direction in Ran is some of the best art direction of Kurosawa's career, which is really saying something.
Yeah. And the reason that I lean towards that is because Ran also wins costume design. So I think there is a respect for the visual palette of the film. We go to cinematography, where I think Ran could also have won.
Yeah.
Or Witness, for that matter. I don't know that the cinematography in The Color Purple was that impressive on a level that it could have come close.
Maybe not compared to the other nominees. Probably not.
Right. So, yeah, as I said, costume design was won by Ran. That is one of the only categories where Out of Africa does not win. So I'm just going to go ahead and say that was probably the runner-up there.
Yeah.
So what's next? Film editing, it was not even nominated for, which I think is pretty significant.
To not get director or editing.
Yeah.
And especially for The Color Purple, which is a film that takes place over a long time span and covers a lot of different eras in a person's life, to not get an editing nomination is a really big miss.
Right. Makeup, there's 3 nominations. Mask is the winner, deserved winner. It's nominated The Color Purple as well as Remo Williams' The Adventure Begins, one of these one-off nominations. And I even think I don't know that the makeup in The Color Purple is as impressive. As far as prosthetics or anything of that sort.
Yeah.
So I actually looked to see some of the makeup that was happening with Remo Williams, and it involved 4 hours of makeup for Joel Grey to become a Korean man. We're not going to delve into that. That's a different topic.
Oh, geez.
Anyway. So original score, I think, is probably the closest it could have come, because we got Quincy Jones as well as a lot of other people nominated here for the score. I don't know if they would have gone for a score with that many people nominated. It's a lot of different factors here.
It's a lot of Oscars to make.
Yeah. So I don't know if it wins there. Witness is nominated there. Who knows? That could have happened.
Yeah.
Original song, Miss Seeley's Blues, Sister. I don't know is as powerful of a song to win this category. You know, I think it's good for the film. I don't know if it stands outside of the film as particularly great.
What's the winner this year for Best Original Song?
Say You, Say Me by Lionel Richie.
I mean, that's a song that has lasted.
Yeah.
So
this category also has The Power of Love from Back to the Future,
which we will get to,
as well as Separate Lives, love theme from White Knights. So I don't know if it wins there either. Let me see if there's anything else. I think that's probably it. Yeah. And then when it comes to Best Picture, that is why I do not think that it was second. I think we should also cover its controversies as well that it dealt with, including some backlash from the NAACP for the fact that a white man was directing this movie, and the depiction of black men in the film was written about as damaging and sometimes stereotypical. So a lot of factors, I think, prevented it from being in that position.
And it certainly is an outlier in Spielberg's career.
Yes, very much so. Yeah, because first of all, he does not typically, do movies with female leads.
Number one.
To begin with.
Yeah.
Let alone kind of a character drama like of this sort.
Yeah, this
or involving, anyone that's not white.
Right.
So,
I mean, like, we get a lot of character dramas. nowadays from Spielberg, especially the great character drama Ready Player One. But
Okay.
yeah, it's really unlike anything else he's ever done before, and it is a big epic. Not getting director is the thing that really, it throws me.
Yeah, exactly.
But given all of this, what do you think of the film The Color Purple?
Actually, it's my favorite of the 5. So that probably goes against my negative diatribe that I just did. But that's just Oscars. That's just business.
In terms of
my enjoyment and the film itself, I think it's almost a masterpiece. And I think it's one of the best films that Spielberg has ever done. And
that is quite a statement.
Yeah. Well, it certainly distinguishes itself as a film more than any other Spielberg film.
Yeah. And as somebody who doesn't have this proclivity or this like nostalgia trap that a lot of people do for the sci-fi and fantasy that Spielberg did in the 80s and 90s and 2000s,
Right, for me, you mean?
Yeah.
Yes. I feel more fondness for this film than most of his other work, to be honest. And I think it's a really emotional story, and I think the way that it's told, despite being on the longer side, it's around, I don't know how similar it is to Out of Africa in runtime.
I think it's a little bit shorter, but I still think it's like between 220 and 230.
Yeah. Well, the difference for me between those two movies is huge, because I think The Color Purple does not waste a single minute of screen time, and I think the singular performance from Whoopi Goldberg in her film debut is just transcendent. I think she really portrays that entire journey from kind of meek woman to being someone who is comfortable to stand up for herself in a very smart and realistic way. And I think it's a real shame that she did not win for this role.
Yeah. I don't know if this is like a super cold take. It's probably pretty cold by now. But Oprah Winfrey is great in The Color Purple.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes. And again, film debut.
Yeah. And the most incredible thing about it is that, like, this is pre-Oprah.
Yeah. She had like a Chicago show. She wasn't even nationwide at this point. She had just started to become a thing as this film was going to be made.
Yeah.
So, yeah, she was not a household name by any means.
And then I think it's just like a year or two later that her program starts.
Right.
And then it's just off to the moon from there.
Right. Yeah, she's fantastic in a very boisterous role that really suits her, I think, in just being totally like tough as nails and not willing to take anyone's shit, especially when it comes to men.
Yeah.
Really entertaining character, and yeah, I think I would even like to see her win for this, because I think she's really great. I think Angelica Houston did deserve that win at the same time, but I would not have been disappointed if she had won.
I do.
Or Margaret Avery.
Yeah, Margaret Avery is also really, really good in this movie, and I think the scenes that she and Oprah share are some of the best scenes in the movie.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Especially that one that comes at the midpoint of the film.
That's you mean when they're alone together? Yeah.
That's really, really great work.
And she's
from everyone,
both of them,
including Spielberg.
Right.
I think.
Yeah. So we did get some questions
about The Color Purple.
Quite a few, actually.
Okay.
And this is from Ed Stevens. He asked, which Color Purple actress do you think had more chances to win, Margaret Avery or Oprah? And what do you think of Avery's already infamous campaign?
Avery's campaign is not great.
Yes. I'm not going to imitate exactly what she did in her ad that she did for herself, I believe, which she campaigned in a print ad, kind of talking almost in character in a very stereotypical way about herself, and also was like passive aggressively being like, I sure do hope the Academy picks me, I worked very hard. That sort of thing.
Yeah, I would I would say that Oprah is probably stronger here.
Yeah.
Because I do, in addition to being a really good performance, I do feel like it's a very quintessential supporting performance.
Yeah, it's a classic supporting actress winner, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Like this kind of scene-stealing character who you kind of, whenever she's on screen, you're laughing, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Whereas I think Margaret Avery, first of all, this was a huge surprise nomination because she literally did not get in anywhere else, including Golden Globes or any critics' prizes. Like, this was it for her, basically, in her entire career, this one Oscar nomination. So I think if the kind of weird campaign that she was doing, which she was also, like, all over the place, just promoting herself very, like, just really out and about in an aggressive way, I think maybe people might have been turned off by that. But also the fact that she didn't have any support beyond this probably suggested that Oprah was in a better position.
Yeah, I'd agree.
But I do think they're both fantastic performances. And I do think it is worth noting that in 1985, where we still don't have a lot of great tackling of or appreciation for any kind of non-white characters or performances or films,
any diversity at all,
right, that we have 3 actresses of color nominated together here in the same year for the same movie. That's very significant. So let's see if there's other questions. I'm sure there is. This is from Gordon at Mark Wahlberg. He said, The Color Purple notoriously is one of 2 films ever to receive 11 nominations and 0 wins. Which of its nominations do you think it most deserved to win for? And why do you think Spielberg didn't get a directing nod? What would you say is most deserving of those that it lost, which is all of them?
Of all of them that it lost, well, who wins Best Actress this year?
Geraldine Page for The Trip to Bountiful.
Okay. You just watched The Trip to Bountiful.
Yes, I did. I found it. And, well, I guess I can talk about it here then. It's one of these roles that once anyone takes this part, it's designed to win an award. Because do you know what The Trip to Bountiful is?
I do not.
Okay. Well, it's just about this older woman who's living with her son and daughter-in-law, and she's kind of crabby and a nuisance at times, and she's always talking about this special place she used to live called Bountiful, and she's going off about it and everything, and eventually she sneaks out of the house to take a train to Bountiful itself, where it used to be, and discovers that it doesn't exist anymore. And she's kind of grappling with the loss of her childhood, in a sense, and her innocence of being like, this place doesn't exist anymore. And it's a really, really juicy part with a lot of character exploration. So that's one reason why she probably won. In addition to the fact that she was very overdue and the Glenn Close of her time, which is, this was her 8th nomination, and this was her first win. So this was richly overdue for her. Yeah. There was just a lot more affection for Geraldine Page than there was for this newcomer, Whoopi Goldberg.
Yeah, okay. That's a little...
So
maybe a screenplay. Because I do think the adapted screenplay of The Color Purple is better than the screenplay to Out of Africa.
I definitely agree with that. I guess score I would have taken, but also... Yeah, well, Out of Africa, that's probably the only win I would give for it.
Yeah.
So probably not that. I would have been fine with either Margaret Avery or Oprah winning. I actually like Whoopi more than Geraldine Page, so I probably would have picked her for that. And non-nominated Steven Spielberg in directing, as well as Best Picture. So, yeah. For me, basically just replace everything that Out of Africa won for and put in The Color Purple.
And you're like, this is
and
a
I'm like,
good year.
This is more... This is better,
yeah.
You know?
Do we want to drill down in any specifics about Spielberg not getting in?
Sure, yes. Well, it's really hard to say, even to this day, exactly why this happened, other than people speculating that it might have just been either jealousy, kind of the equivalent of the slap the stud syndrome in actor, which is, this idea that you have everything. You make all these great financial successes. You're so one of the most revered directors in Hollywood for your blockbuster entertainment, at least. And so why do you need this?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, it's at the same time almost a separation between, like, Spielberg did have movies that were considered art, but at the same time, he was considered more of an entertainment person.
He'd only
so
had
it's a different club almost.
Yeah, it was only a few years prior that they did Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
So, like, he's a big success.
Yeah.
He doesn't, quote unquote,
he doesn't
need this.
Right. On top of some of the controversy of the fact that this is a white man directing a all-black cast, telling a black story, I think that probably didn't help with some members. And I don't know, possibly just a Ben Affleck situation where people wanted to vote for someone like Akira Kurosawa because that was their passion pick. And they took for granted that Steven Spielberg could get nominated for this because obviously he was going to get nominated for this, so I'm not going to waste my vote. I'm going to go with the passion vote.
Yeah.
So on top of that, we got a question from San Diego Spookorama.
It's still Halloween.
Yes. And they said, was Hollywood still punishing Spielberg by not giving him a director nod for the Twilight Zone disaster? Do you know about this?
Yeah, that is another great possible reason.
Yes, this was just 2 years previously, so it was still in the public consciousness. This story where Steven Spielberg was a producer and a director on one segment of the Twilight Zone, the movie. Basically what happened is two kids were in violation of laws of how, kids can't work at night and be overworked and things like that. And those were kind of just ignored. And two kids died in a helicopter incident.
On the set of Twilight Zone, the movie.
Yeah. And they were like little kids.
Yeah.
Little kids.
Yeah.
So there was this big investigation launched. Spielberg is the producer, very prominent producer on this film. And perhaps the ramifications of that could have influenced things as well. Who knows? I mean, the film was still a big hit, The Color Purple. So financially and the public, I think, were, I guess, not too influenced by that. But it's possible that within the industry and how the Directors Guild had to make all these new rules after this, basically changing how things are made, making this new role of risk manager, or I don't know what the specific title is.
Right.
But someone who can watch to make sure everything is safe.
I don't know if it really hurts, but it certainly doesn't help.
Right. So a lot of factors that I think added up to this very strange thing that happened.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on The Color Purple?
No. Let's talk about...
Well, wait.
Okay. Yes.
Well, I was just going to say that we just received word yesterday.
Oh, yes. The big news.
That The Color Purple, which was adapted into a Broadway musical, is now going to be a movie musical. So it's taking the Hairspray route. Where it was a standard film first, then it became a musical, then the musical was turned into a movie musical.
Yes. A Tony Award-winning musical.
Right, for our friend Cynthia Erivo.
Who will most certainly, almost without a doubt, win her Oscar.
Yeah.
If she reprises her role from the musical.
I do expect her to play Celie again. I don't know that anyone else is going to, especially now that she is transitioning into film. She's going to want that part hard.
Not only that, but I believe she will become, if not the first, then at the very least, one of the few people to EGOT for a single property.
Yeah, that has never happened before, so it's definitely the first. Yeah, so The Color Purple is her lucky charm.
Yeah.
And the fact that Cynthia Erivo is one away from an EGOT is still kind of baffling to me.
Yeah.
Even though I love her.
But
it just all happened so fast.
She just starts doing movies this year.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So, as Eric Anderson tweeted to me, if she doesn't already win an Oscar for playing Harriet Tubman, she will probably win for this.
Mm-hmm.
So congrats on your future Oscar, Cynthia Erivo.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you can make up for what the Academy did by snubbing Whoopi Goldberg.
Justice for Whoopi.
Yes, and I hope she thanks her in her speech.
Please do.
But that's a few years down the road.
Let's talk about the other two films.
Should we? Okay.
In the Best Picture race here.
Okay. So Prizzi's Honor is an interesting one because I'm pretty sure you did not like it.
Prizzi's Honor.
We watched it together and you didn't seem like you were into it.
Prizzi's Honor is okay.
Yeah.
It is a John Huston film,
yep.
whom I learned after the fact, as I looked on the Letterboxd, is an incredibly famous movie director.
I can't believe you admitted that. You're going to get crucified.
Yeah, I'm going to get a lot of hate for learning about John Huston this week.
You learned about John Huston upon watching Prizzi's Honor.
My very first John Huston film.
Anyway, moving on.
I also learned that Angelica Huston is related to John Huston.
Yeah, it's his daughter.
Yeah.
You're just digging your grave.
Yeah. Listen, I'm very new to all of this.
You're green.
I'm very green. I've only been into the Oscars for, I don't know, like 3 or 4 years now.
Yeah.
Yeah. But this is a lifetime dedication for you.
Well, somewhat lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
Half my lifetime.
Half your lifetime. At any rate. Prizzi's Honor.
Prizzi.
There's a Z. There's a T. No, there's not.
There is not a T, but do you say, how do you pronounce the word Pizza?
Pizza. Prizzi.
There we go.
Okay.
We all learned today.
Oh, great. Okay. Prizzi's Honor is fine.
Yes.
It stars Jack Nicholson and Kathleen Turner.
Yes. As spies. Or assassins, not spies.
They are both assassins. They're hit people.
Right. So, and it's one of these clever, like, almost Mr. and Mrs. Smith situations where they fall in love and eventually it gets to a point where they have to turn on each other while, dealing with this crime family and defending Prizzi's Honor.
Yeah. This film has a lot of nominations.
Yeah, 8.
And it is one of John Huston's last films.
Yes, because I believe he dies 2 years later. Yeah, so I do agree with what you were saying while we were watching it, that it feels like a film that is quite old-fashioned in many ways.
Yeah.
In its sensibilities and how it's presented, even like the editing and
yeah. As I told you while we were watching the film, before I knew who John Huston was, like, this feels like this could be like a black and white movie. It really has the feel. It has the kind of characters, and then I'm like, oh, okay, well that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense now, doesn't it?
Yeah, it all makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think for that reason, I understand why it was nominated, why it got so many nominations, but I do think it's the weakest of the Best Picture nominees, in my opinion.
Even weaker than Out of Africa?
Okay, never mind. It is the second weakest.
Okay.
Out of the Best Picture nominees of this year.
Fair enough. Yeah, I really love Angelica Huston in the film. I think whenever she's on screen, it's magic. I think this is a case of nepotism gone right.
Yes.
Cough, cough, the opposite of The Godfather Part 3.
Cough, cough.
Yeah.
Angelica Huston is great in this movie.
She is, her mind is just, it knows no bounds. She masterminds the whole film.
Can we put spoiler alerts on a movie from 33 years ago?
Sure.
Okay, spoiler alert. This whole movie is basically about Angelica Huston convincing Jack Nicholson to murder his wife.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the way the movie ends is just, it's a real, like, chef's kiss.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that it ends with her. Yeah, it's solid. I actually liked William Hickey, even though other people, as I've read, do not like his performance as kind of the crime boss.
Yeah.
It's very cartoony, I think. But I just like him as an actor that I kind of forgive it, and I think he's a big scene stealer. So, what do you think?
I thought he was fine.
Okay.
I'm not on your side on this one, but
Jack Nicholson.
Jack Nicholson is he's not really Nicholsoning it up as much as he does in other movies.
Well, he's putting on an accent.
Yeah.
He's doing that New York thing where he's saying "yous."
Yeah, there's a
Yous
lot
guys.
There is a lot of yous in this movie.
Yeah, which is a bit much.
It is a bit much.
But oddly enough, he did receive quite a bit of acclaim for this performance, including a Golden Globe. But that's probably because the film was in the comedy categories.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Which I think it's like kind of a comedy, but also the tone I think of the film is like way all over the place.
I don't know, because this film is not a comedy, but it isn't a drama, but it isn't a dramedy.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. It's hard to even figure out what's happening.
It's whatever you called whatever things were classified as back in the 40s and 50s.
There you go.
And Kathleen Turner is good in this movie. I like Kathleen Turner more than I like Jack Nicholson here.
Yeah, no arguments there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Kiss of the Spider-Woman. That's an interesting one, isn't it?
Directed by Hector Babenco.
Hector Babenco, yes.
Starring William Hurt and Raul Julia.
Yes. This is the first independent film to be nominated for Best Picture.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty significant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've
been talking a lot about independent films for this entire show because Kiss of the Spider-Woman was the first to break through that wall. So it's very influential in that way too.
After this, it's all studio system, baby.
Yep. Yeah. So
hope you like hearing the words Paramount a lot.
Correct. Well, it's coming up, Terms of Endearment. So
I liked this movie more than I thought I would.
Okay.
Because
let's explore that.
You don't hear a lot about this movie. I feel like I hear the title a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I think this is a good movie.
It's an evocative title.
And you've been talking a lot on this show about William Hurt, who keeps showing up year after year in the 80s and 90s.
Yep. This is the fourth in a row.
Going backwards.
That I'm talking. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And in many ways, this is a good place to end the streak because he wins Best Actor for this performance.
Yes, this is William Hurt's Academy Award-winning performance.
Yeah.
And I like William Hurt here. I don't know if that's a hot take. I don't know if that's controversial. I don't know what attitudes are about Kiss of the Spider-Woman.
Well, it is a hot take in some circles because maybe even at the time, but especially now, when people look at that performance, they see a lot of stereotyping on his part, kind of queening it up in a sense.
Yeah.
That
definitely
at that time there were not a lot of gay characters or transgender characters on screen, and so when you have one of your only examples on screen being this, you can see why some attitudes were like, yeah, not cool.
Yeah.
Especially when it's also a straight man doing this,
yeah.
Which would have had even more controversy if this came out today.
I think it is good for its time.
Yeah.
I think you can't make a movie. I would say you can't make a movie like this today, but they do still make movies like this today, which is unfortunate. But I think for its time is good. And I also really like Raul Julia here.
Yeah, Raul Julia is beyond great in this movie, and it's really almost baffling to me that he didn't get a nomination, despite maybe the fact that it would have been in lead, and it's very difficult to get two performances from the same movie in a lead category.
Yeah. You know, and if we go to a world where Raul Julia is nominated in place of William Hurt, I think he wins.
Well, we got a question exactly to that effect.
Okay.
Which is from Brandon Stanwyck, who said, would you rescind William Hurt's nomination and give it to Raul Julia instead?
Yes.
I would have voted for him. I actually would have nominated both.
I think you can nominate both.
To get my thoughts on William Hurt, I do definitely see the criticisms there, because he does do that in some ways, and especially for the time, it's not too great, honestly, but I don't think it verges on stereotyping that to an extreme effect. you know?
I think it could be worse.
I think it's, yeah, exactly. I think it's a very complex performance that takes a lot of studying to figure out exactly what he's doing and the brilliance of his performance. He really does become this other character in a way that I did not see whatsoever in any of the films that I was talking about the past 3 years.
Yeah, that's really the thing about William Hurt is that, like, I feel like watching Kiss of the Spider Woman was the first time I've ever seen William Hurt really act.
Exactly.
Because I feel like in every other film I've ever seen him in, he's just being William Hurt.
Right. Kind of sleepy and listless.
He's just like a guy.
Just a guy.
He's just a guy.
Everyman,
yeah.
almost.
But I think in not playing an everyman in this movie, I think that's why I like him a little bit more.
Right.
But I do think that I would have given the Oscar to Raul Julia if he had been nominated.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree. I prefer his performance. It's a lot more subtle, and sometimes I respond to that a little more. But you can see why they went with William Hurt, because that's very obvious, over-the-top acting from start to finish from him.
But there's so much bottled emotion in that Raul Julia performance.
Yes. And the evolving relationship between the two of them, who are put in prison together, is just so fascinating to watch, and I think so smartly written. And it evolves, again, in such a realistic way that I found that to be pretty steamy as well at times, you know?
Yeah.
Especially by the end. Yeah, it's beautiful.
There's that segment, I think it's either 2/3 or like almost towards the end of the film, where William Hurt is about to leave the prison, and Raul Julia just hugs him, and it means so much after what has happened throughout the course of the movie.
Yeah,
you know,
that physical contact.
Yeah.
And I also like all of the fantasy sequences in the film, the sort of film within the film that's happening.
The Spider-Woman.
Right. As the William Hurt character is revealing this film that he watched, that he really took a liking to.
Which turns out to be a Nazi propaganda film.
Right. So, yeah, just very smart. And I the blurring lines between the two, and it's great.
Yeah.
I think it requires a lot of analysis that would be interesting.
And I think this is definitely the kind of film that has takes all over the place if it's released today.
Exactly. Yeah. So I don't even know if it makes it to this point, but for its time, it's pretty bold.
Yeah.
And it's a bold choice on the Academy's part, too, to even go for it.
Yeah.
Sad to say.
In Best Picture.
Right.
Yeah.
So, pretty cool.
Did we answer the question of why Out of Africa won?
Pretty much. I mean, we noted how it's very sweeping and epic in the sense that the Academy loves to go for these kinds of big movies, especially when they have an exotic element, especially when it comes from this historical place. And honestly, when you look at this movie, I think this is the absolute definition of what people are thinking of when they say the phrase Oscar bait. From every single element, including Meryl Streep.
And Robert Redford.
Yeah, but I mean Meryl Streep especially.
Meryl Streep is one of the queens.
But yes, I mean, you look at the location, the cinematography, the fact that it comes from this esteemed director, Sidney Pollack, who is very beloved.
It feels like a film that is inherently Academy Award winning.
Yeah, it's bait. And they fell for the bait.
They fell very hard for the bait.
Yeah, head over heels.
Yeah.
So I actually want to know how you would rank this Best Picture lineup.
I think
because I could do mine.
Okay, you do yours first.
Okay. My number 5 is Out of Africa. Easily. My number 4 is Prizzi's Honor. My number 3 is Kiss of the Spider Woman. My number 2 is Witness, and my number 1 is The Color Purple.
I would do the same. I would probably swap Witness and Kiss of the Spider Woman.
Yeah, that's probably fair.
But I'd have Out of Africa at the bottom and The Color Purple at the top.
Would you?
Yeah, I think so.
Good.
Great.
I'm glad we can kind of sort of agree on that.
We can agree on that.
Yeah. So let me see. Let's just get to this question from @the3rd Thomas. Said, I love Out of Africa. Why does it get so much hate?
I think
we're part of the hatred, so it's hard to judge
we also
that objectively.
It's hard to say. We've talked about why we don't like the movie.
I think it's because of what it represents and the fact that it swept so much in a year that could have rewarded a lot of great movies.
This year has a lot of interesting, compelling films about women, about minorities, and not rewarding any of those.
Right.
And just rewarding Out of Africa. I think that's where a lot of the distaste comes from.
Yeah. In addition to the fact that it's boring.
And
that's it.
That is dull.
That's my last mention of that.
Okay.
So let's get into our Should Have Been a Contender segment.
1985 is quite a year.
So this is other movies nominated for Oscars or any movie from 1985 that we wanted to mention. So I had a big list.
I have a list of films. You have a large list here.
Yeah, so
I'm intimidated.
Okay.
I just want to let's talk about 1985 for a second.
Yes, as we've been doing.
Very interesting to note that Out of Africa and The Color Purple are the number 5 and 4 film of this year.
That's right.
Which is crazy.
And Witness is number 8.
Out of Africa made $87 million, and The Color Purple made $94 million.
Yep.
So both were really big hits,
yep.
And certainly not the kind of thing you see nowadays.
Best popular film.
Boy.
Best popular film winner, Out of Africa.
We have to talk about the number 1 film of the year.
Okay.
Back to the Future.
That's right.
Here we are.
Yeah. I think this was part of why you even wanted to do this episode.
It wasn't part of the reason why, but it certainly is a boon to get to talk about Back to the Future because it is one of the best films of the 1980s.
Or ever.
It's a real seminal picture.
Yeah.
You know?
It is a perfect piece of filmmaking on an entertainment level alone.
It made $210 million.
And you can see why.
At the box office, which adjusted for inflation is over $500 million.
Exactly.
It's a hit.
So, yeah, it's beyond a hit.
Is it an understatement to say that Back to the Future is a hit?
Yeah, you can say that it did well.
Yeah. And it is Oscar nominated.
Yes. Which is pretty cool, especially for it to be in the original screenplay category. That is pretty significant.
I really like Witness a lot, and I think the screenplay is really great. It has a really solid foundation, but I wish that Back to the Future had won. I don't know if it's the kind of movie that would have won at the time.
Probably not, because it's not a Best Picture nominee. So that's rule 1.
And I do like Say You, Say Me, but I wish The Power of Love had won Best Original Song.
Yeah.
Because that's a fun song, and I love Huey Lewis and the News.
And the News?
And the News. Not just Huey Lewis, but the News as well.
That's big of you. So it was also nominated for sound effects editing, which is now sound editing, and sound, which is now sound mixing. And it did win sound effects editing, so that's good.
It is an Academy Award-winning film.
Yeah, but it lost sound to Out of Africa again.
I
don't know if there was memorable sound in Out of Africa. I would say Back to the Future probably has more significant sound mixing there, but regardless.
Well, if you think about sound mixing as like, the mixing of the score into the film, then maybe you can see why it won sound, but outside of that, I don't really get it.
Yeah. So, yeah, Back to the Future is a masterpiece.
Is it? I think it's probably Robert Zemeckis' best film. No, let me take that back. It is, for me personally, his second best film, because his best film is Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
The Polar Express.
Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which is my favorite movie of all time.
What?
Yeah.
Since when?
Since it's always been my favorite movie.
Okay. Now I know for
future reference.
Yeah, okay.
I do think Back to the Future is the best one of the trilogy, although I agree. I do like 2 as well, but number 1, like, it is It's the screenplay is actually a masterpiece.
Actually, it's a masterpiece.
Actually a masterpiece.
Yeah.
No, it's so
Take
good.
that.
And Michael J. Fox is great. And Leah Thompson is great.
Yeah.
Christopher Lloyd in one of the most memorable performances of the 80s.
Now he should have been nominated.
Ooh, that is great. I love that.
Yeah. Because it's like such a classic performance.
It's such a classic character.
Yeah. I do know that we received a question about this,
Mm-hmm.
I think. Yes. This is from Michael Kamens. Saying, does Back to the Future get in an expanded lineup? How does that score not get nominated? And is Christopher Lloyd lead or supporting?
Okay, number one, I do think it gets into an expanded lineup nowadays. I think maybe in a 8 or 9 slot, but I think it is in there.
Yeah. Also, Jeffrey Kerr asked that as well about that.
I don't know how that score doesn't get nominated. I think it's a kind of thing of like, in hindsight, it of course makes sense to nominate Back to the Future because it's one of the most iconic movie scores of all time. But maybe at the time they're like, no, we like the score to Witness more.
No, we like the score to Agnes of God.
Yeah, that's a real score. And also it's also the kind of thing of like I don't know. Maybe they're just old. They don't get it.
Maybe they're just old. Yeah, could be.
Yeah, and Christopher Lloyd, what do you think?
I don't know. I really need to look at the screen time there because I think if you look at the definition saying that lead should be reserved for this is what the film, this is the character that the film is about, then that is Michael J. Fox alone.
Yeah.
But he has so much screen time, Christopher Lloyd.
He's in a lot of the movie. I feel like
that if he was an actress, he would be an actress. You know,
right? You know what? I honestly, the feeling that I get is that he would have been in supporting, but it would kind of be category fraud.
And just to bring back the Saturn Awards, the prestigious Saturn Awards
that take place on the planet Saturn.
Yes, beamed live.
Beam live from Saturn.
Yes,
it's the Saturn Awards.
He was nominated for Best Supporting Actor.
So there you go.
So that's probably where he was going to be campaigned. But I mean, I can see it, and I wouldn't be too feeling like it's category fraud because I do think it is Marty McFly's story.
Right.
But at the same time, he's also kind of a big star to the point, well, kind of a star, relatively speaking, to the point that he could have justified lead. And maybe even gotten in over Michael J. Fox.
Yeah.
Probably would have over Michael J. Fox if it come down to it.
Yeah, I could see that happening.
Though Michael J. Fox was nominated at the Golden Globes. But they love him there. So that's pretty much it for Back to the Future. It's a great film.
It's a great film.
It's
Let me just say, if you haven't seen it, maybe you should check it out.
If you haven't seen it, you're crazy.
Yeah.
Get on that.
Please.
Yeah. So Clue. I love Clue.
I haven't seen Clue in the longest time, but let me tell you, I loved it when I saw it.
Yeah. So speaking of really entertaining films that have really endured, Clue is a very good example of that. I love Tim Curry. Madeline Kahn is incredible. Just flames. Flames on the sides of my face.
It is eminently quotable.
Yes. And what? Go ahead.
The classic comedy from the year.
Another classic comedy from the year. And that's what Josh Parham asked about. Do you think any members of Clue's ensemble deserved awards recognition? Yes, Madeline Kahn. I agree with Karen Peterson, who tweeted that GIF in response.
There you go.
And yeah, Tim Curry. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll always take Tim Curry. Having also just watched Rocky Horror Picture Show, I will always take Tim Curry.
Yeah. Always yes.
Yes.
Check good.
Yeah.
Always yes, check good.
Yeah. You getting tired?
I'm holding it in there, man.
Okay. What's next?
Okay, can I just take a minute to talk about a film that nobody ever talks about? And
Okay.
I'm gonna just yell about this for like 5 minutes.
Sure.
I'm gonna yell about The Black Cauldron.
Oh boy.
For half a minute here.
Okay.
The Black Cauldron, released in 1985, the film that almost brought down the Walt Disney Animation Studio
to its knees.
Yes, it cost $44 million, at the time one of the most expensive animated films. It made $22 million, one of the very few flops in Disney's history. It took them about 3 to 4 years to really dig out of that hole before they got Beauty and the Beast, which was Oscar nominated. But The Black Cauldron is not good. It is a real mess of a movie. It is one of the only films in the Disney animated canon to never be released on Blu-ray.
Oof.
The film was released,
and they released Home on the Range.
They released Home on the Range. The film was released in 1985 and didn't get a release on DVD until at least 10 years later.
Oof.
Just because this film is an absolute disaster. They like to pretend that it doesn't exist. But let me tell you,
it exists.
12-year-old Sebastian loved this film, was obsessed with it, because it's just like, it's this kind of thing, you get to be part of a community of dozens who care about this film, and characters like Taran and the Horned King and Gurgi.
Are you just saying names and words?
Yeah.
I haven't seen it.
This is the first Disney animated film to be nominated PG. Not nominated, but rated PG.
Right.
Just because the Horn King is literally just a skeleton man.
Eesh.
Yeah. What else do I have for little facts about the Black Cauldron? Oh, and also the first Disney animated film to use CGI.
There you go. And also, there's no, fun musical element to it at all, right?
There's no fun music. There's barely any fun at all. Gurgi was inserted post-production after screenings.
Who is Gurgi?
Gurgi is a small furry man who loves apples.
Okay.
Yeah, I like this film in the sense that it's not good and it's a real oddity, and amongst the Disney canon, it is the ultimate redheaded stepchild.
Yes, it really is.
In that it very nearly destroyed the studio. Fun thing to note is that, in the midst of, Disney launching their own streaming service, owning Indiana Jones and Marvel and Star Wars and Fox, the company,
yes.
Now, it's just very fun to note that in the year 1985, there are, count 'em, 0 Buena Vista Pictures in the top 10.
Oof.
Disney, it's very strange to think of a time in Hollywood where Disney was not making money.
Yeah, that is weird.
And here we are in this weird pocket.
This 1 year.
In this weird pocket where Disney is not doing well financially.
To go back to that time.
To go back to that time.
Yeah.
And now
different world.
And now we are owned by them.
This is a Disney sponsored podcast.
Yeah. Other films from 85 that are actually successful and remembered.
Okay. Well, you remember The Black Cauldron.
Yeah. Let's talk about Rand for a minute
Perfect.
or two.
Okay. You have a relationship with this movie.
Yeah.
Right?
I did my senior thesis about Shakespeare and film, so I have seen Rand 6 or 7 times.
Wow.
It is great. I love it a lot. I think
this is Akira Kurosawa.
Mm-hmm.
Legendary
director adapting the story of King Lear to the screen. And there's a lot of great colors. There's a lot of great cinematography. Yeah. The score is amazing. I really, really like it.
Also, it's very sad.
It is.
I must say. It is a real tragedy.
It is an upsetting film.
It's very upsetting. The ending is hopeless.
Mm-hmm.
It's just basically everything is in carnage.
Yeah.
And it's just this one blind man on this tower.
The story of King Lear is about this guy who doesn't get it and messes everything up, and everything around him is destroyed.
Yeah.
So you take that, you put it in color, you give it to Akira Kurosawa, and you get a really gut-wrenching but really beautiful film.
Yes.
Oscar nominated, Oscar winning.
Yes. I don't remember the name of the character, but the one prominent female character who is married to the eldest son, she's another one of these people where it's like her mind. She is conniving and evil, and I loved her.
Boy, oh boy.
Yeah, just saying.
Yeah.
Memorable part.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and the part I can't remember any of the names, to be honest, but the King Lear character in the film is also really powerful in the way he gets kind of haunted by everything that's happened to his life.
It's a really great performance.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great movie, and I'm glad that the Oscars actually managed to acknowledge it at all.
Yeah.
So,
I'm very glad that they did, because I would have been pretty mad if they had completely ignored it. But I think, it could be a passion pick, but it could just also be like, this is a really great movie pick when Kurosawa was nominated for director.
Yeah, for sure. This is from Cameron McCrae, who asked, with 4 nominations, including Best Director, if Japan had selected Ran as its entry for a foreign language film, could it have gotten into Best Picture? Which it did not.
It did
Ran.
not.
Yeah.
I think it could have. I think this might be a difficult year for it to get into. I'm not sure what they take. I don't know what you take out in place of Ran. What do you think?
I have no idea.
Yeah,
I don't know about the foreign language films that much.
Yeah,
I do know that the official story was acclaimed and it did win. It probably wins, I would say, Ran, because getting into director is pretty significant.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
So probably, and it also wins costume design, so that's also significant.
Yeah.
I will just tell you a story. I don't know if you know about this, about why it was not selected by Japan.
But
the assumption is that it was done for petty reasons, because that's not just a recent thing that certain things are petty when it comes to the Oscar race. It's through entirety of history.
The whole history of the Oscars,
Yeah.
There's petty behavior everywhere.
So Kurosawa was campaigning all over the place for Ran in America, and apparently he was supposed to be at this Tokyo festival for film festival, and he, I guess, snubbed them, and they took it very personally. And they just had like a weird relationship between them that didn't gel, essentially. And they were just like, we are not going to submit this film to the Oscars. So that's what happened there.
Yeah, well, that's
which is really disappointing and annoying and petty.
It's really unfortunate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other films? I liked Brazil.
Okay.
Terry Gilliam.
Brazil for me feels very similar to, oh man, what's the name of that movie? It's not a movie, it's a book, and I don't remember what it is.
Okay.
But I don't like Brazil. It's very upsetting to me, and I did not have a good time watching it. I understand why it is revered and why people like it, but the aesthetic and story of Brazil for me is very it is a horror film.
Is it unnerving?
Yes, it's very unnerving. It feels very Lynchian.
Yes. Well, it's a very Orwellian tale. Very much a 1984 kind of world. So, yeah, you can see where that can get unsettling.
For me, this is I understand why people like it, and I understand the artistry of it, but it's very scary.
That's fair.
Yeah.
It's revered as a classic. By many, but I can definitely see why others would be turned off.
Yes. Give me nightmares.
How about The Breakfast Club?
Oh, man. The Breakfast Club, now on Criterion.
Yeah, both of those are on Criterion.
Yes.
Oddly enough. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love The Breakfast Club.
It is actually a classic.
It is a classic.
Another classic.
Of course, there, in the past year or so, there's been a lot of talk about its issues with a lot of the rom-coms and stuff of the day, of the 80s and such.
Yep.
But I think The Breakfast Club holds up.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's a great story. I think it's got a lot of the good characters. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a very simple concept that's very economical storytelling that's well told.
Yeah, I think it's got a good screenplay.
The ending is classic.
Yeah.
As you know.
It's got the fists in the air, and then you play the song. And
Judd Hirsch is great.
33 years later, we're still doing it.
Yes, we are.
It's still a go-to reference.
Exactly.
The Goonies comes out this year.
Yes, another classic that people love.
I saw The Goonies when I was like 18, so I don't get it. But like,
yeah,
I think you have to be at the right age when you first watch The Goonies.
Which I was, to be fair.
Yeah.
I actually specifically remember being in maybe middle school or high school, one of those. But we watched The Goonies. I don't remember why or the context.
It could have been one of those days when you have a substitute teacher,
Yeah.
or like your teacher is very tired.
Yeah.
Because, as we know, we are now at the age where our friends, we know people that are teachers.
Right.
So you can understand now
Yeah.
that then you would be very tired and would just say to your students, listen, I'm going to take a nap. You guys can just watch The Goonies.
Exactly. So anyway, that happened. And I remember half the class was very excited because we had all seen it as childhood, it was a childhood classic. Half the class was just like, I haven't seen this, but, the people who really loved it were like, oh, trust me, you're really going to love it. It's so great. It's one of the best movies ever. And then by the time it ended, the people who had not seen it as a younger people were just like, I don't get it.
Yeah. The Goonies has to hit you at the right age. And I
Yeah.
think that age is like between 10 and 15.
Yeah.
After that, like...
Or younger.
Or younger, yeah. Even younger.
Yeah.
But I think The Goonies is... As somebody who watched The Goonies when I was like 18, I think The Goonies is fine.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is a really great kids film.
Yes, it is a kids film.
Yeah, but that's the extent that it goes for me personally.
Yeah.
This is a really good segue into something that I noticed while browsing through doing some research for this year, which is the fact that there are a lot of film debuts in 1985.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Such as in The Goonies, we get Sean Astin and Josh Brolin in their first films.
Yes.
I wrote down this big list of other people who are in their first major motion pictures in 1985.
Okay.
Including Helena Bonham Carter, Don Cheadle, Ethan Hawke, John Leguizamo, Melissa Leo, Leslie Manville, Viggo Mortensen, as we know,
Jeez.
Kira Sedgwick, Christian Slater, Stanley Tucci, Billy Zane is in Back to the Future.
Yep.
And we would see him later in Titanic. Anyway.
That is really interesting, in addition to Whoopi and Oprah.
In addition to Whoopi Goldberg and Oprah Winfrey.
Yeah. That's fantastic.
I think it's very interesting also the fact that I think is it this year or like a year or two earlier or later that we do that one segment where they're like, here are the stars of tomorrow.
Yep. That was 2 years later.
Yeah. And we get...
Or 3 years later.
We get one actor there, Christian Slater, who is still noticeably working today.
Yeah.
Where they had all these other people that were actually the stars of tomorrow.
I know.
Mm-hmm.
That is quite interesting, isn't it?
1985 is a year that Keanu Reeves starts working. He should have been in that Song and Dance. And then we would have been like, yeah, he is one of the stars of tomorrow.
That's right.
Not Oscar nominated, but still
but
a big...
still very prominent.
Still
much
a big
more
deal.
than like anyone else there.
Yeah.
Sorry, Melora Hardin.
Boy.
I just also want to mention Lost in America, which is another Criterion film.
Yeah.
Lots of good Criterion films from this year.
Mm-hmm.
Great Albert Brooks performance. Julia Haggerty is really great as well.
Really great screenplay.
Yeah, and really excellent Gary Marshall scene.
Oh, the Gary Marshall scene in Lost in America is some of his best work.
Yes.
As an actor.
Where he's this casino manager trying to explain that he cannot give back money because literally everyone would do that.
Yeah.
It's just so fun, and his whole delivery is just great. Great bewildered acting.
You know what the best thing is for me about Lost in America is the fact that you have this Oscar year, where you have The Color Purple is 2 hours and 20 minutes. The Out of Africa is 2 hours and 40 minutes long. Lost in America is a tight 90 minutes.
Yeah, that's very good.
There you go. In and out, and you get it good, and you get all the beats, and everything's great, and the jokes are fun.
Well, speaking of that kind of short run time, we just talked about Woody Allen last week with Hannah and Her Sisters.
Mm-hmm.
This year he had the movie The Purple Rose of Cairo, which is 82 minutes.
Perfect length. The shorter the movie, the better.
Yes.
Listen, my favorite films. I'm being kind of sarcastic here.
Thank
so
you for
just to preface that. My favorite films are the ones that are just over the length of a short film.
Yes, just making it enough to be a feature length.
Yes, if they had cut 5 minutes from that movie, he would have had to submit it in live action short.
Right.
I remember really liking The Purple Rose of Cairo when I watched it when I was younger.
Yeah.
I like Jeff Daniels here.
Yes, he's so great in dual roles.
Yeah.
And it's a very, very, very inventive screenplay, which is why he's nominated for original screenplay, as he is almost every year.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the only nomination for The Purple Rose of Cairo, despite Mia Farrow giving a really excellent performance as this Depression-era woman who escapes to the movies, who ultimately sees this really interesting blending of real and surreal as the movie characters come out of the screen, literally.
Yeah.
And interact with her and others.
Talking about The Purple Rose of Cairo makes me want to watch it again for the first time in a while.
Yes. Well, it is very short.
I could do it in an afternoon and still have time for everything else in my day.
Literally, you could have watched The Purple Rose of Cairo while we were doing this podcast, and it would have been over 20 minutes ago.
Great.
So it's great.
Awesome.
Yeah. Speaking of that, Andrew Carden asked, who was most robbed of a Best Actress nom this year? Cher for Mask, Mia Farrow for The Purple Rose of Cairo, or Kathleen Turner for Prizzi's Honor?
What do you think?
Well, I have to sadly admit that I haven't seen Mask.
Me neither.
I'm sorry. It's one of these movies where I don't know if I want to watch it. It just seems a bit difficult, but I'm sure I've heard a lot of great things about Cher, who actually wins at Cannes.
Whoa.
Best Actress. So that's pretty significant.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry I haven't seen it. I know that's disappointing to a lot of people. But The Purple Rose of Cairo, Mia Farrow, I would have definitely supported that nomination. And I would have been fine with Kathleen Turner and Prizzi's Honor being nominated. It's not like that outstanding of a performance for me.
Yeah.
But definitely Mia Farrow, and if I were to take someone out of this lineup, that would be hard. Honestly, I would not mind if Meryl Streep wasn't even nominated. I would be fine with that. I guess I would take out Anne Bancroft. But yeah, I'm fine with Geraldine Page even being nominated, and obviously Whoopi. And I'll always have Jessica Lange at the Oscars
every year.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So would you say either Kathleen Turner or Mia Farrow was better?
Well, considering that I watched Kathleen Turner a few days ago, and I watched Mia Farrow like 10 years ago,
okay.
I'm inclined to say Kathleen Turner. But if I watch The Purple Rose of Cairo like in a few days, I will tweet and I will tell you Mia Farrow deserved to be nominated at the Oscars.
Yeah, she was great, and it's a very transformative role for her.
Mm-hmm.
So, never been nominated, Mia Farrow. Very sadly.
That's a bummer.
Yeah, you would think that she would be, especially with all those Woody Allen movies that gave her a lot of material. But I think that's it for questions. Probably I missed something. I'm sorry, but
what a
interesting year.
What a year, 1985.
Yeah, I do know someone said something to the effect that the Best Picture nominees weren't exactly classics, any of them, to which I would argue otherwise, because at the very least, The Color Purple is a classic, in my opinion.
I think in a year where you have a lot of films that people consider to be classics, films like Back to the Future, films like The Goonies, films like The Breakfast Club. These are films that people always think about when they think of the 80s.
And even on the more artistic side, movies like Ran and Brazil.
Yeah. To not have those films like in the Oscar conversation as much as stuff like Prizzi's Honor or Kiss of the Prizzi's Honor or Kiss of the Spider-Woman or even Witness. I understand why people would be like, the nominees this year aren't really as spectacular as the blockbusters, but
meh.
Yeah. I like The Color Purple.
I love The Color Purple.
And I do not like Out of Africa.
Correct.
And I like Witness enough.
Okay, well, we'll get to that in our final segment.
Okay.
But I think that's it. So let's transition to our final segment.
Okay.
When we come back, we will be giving our verdict as to whether Out of Africa deserved that Best Picture win, or if Witness should have taken it.
The nominees for the Best Pictures are The Color Purple, a Warner Brothers production, Warner Brothers, Steven Spielberg, Kathleen Kennedy, Frank Marshall, and Quincy Jones producers.
Kiss of the Spider-Woman, an HB Films production in association with Sugarloaf Films, Island Alive. David Weissman, producer.
Out of Africa, Universal Pictures Limited production. Universal, Sydney Pollack, producer.
Brooks's Honor, an ABC motion picture production, 20th Century Fox, producer.
Witness, an Edward S. Feldman production, Paramount, Edward S. Feldman, producer.
The envelope, please. The winner is Out of Africa.
And we're back. So now we'll be delivering our verdict as to whether Out of Africa deserved that Best Picture win, or if Witness perhaps should have taken it more, or another movie could have. So, Seb, what's your pick?
Okay, well, if I had to pick between Out of Africa and Witness, I would go with Witness.
Yes.
I understand why the Academy at this time went with Out of Africa, but I think Witness is a better movie. If I could get anything from this Best Picture lineup, I think the Best Picture should be The Color Purple. But because it did not get any wins, I'm going to go with Witness as the proper winner for this year.
Yes, very good. Okay, so I concur. I think that Witness is a better movie than Out of Africa, even if I think Out of Africa is the higher artistic achievement, was clearly more difficult to make, and, you know, all those factors make sense for why people say it's quote-unquote a better film. But I think Witness does what it does better than Out of Africa, and is a leagues more interesting story.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that Out of Africa really holds up even as much as Witness does. Even though Witness does have like that stereotypical 80s synth score that certainly dates it, I think overall the film could have been made today as far as the story for how it is.
Yeah, I think it's as a technical achievement, Out of Africa I think holds up, but on a narrative sense, it really, really does not.
Exactly. And I do think narrative is more important at the end of the day.
I agree.
So I actually wanted to quickly on the spot introduce something that we should try to do for future episodes.
Oh.
Yes, I'm putting you on the spot here.
Oh.
But you've given me a bit of an idea for what we can do for this final segment now, which is beyond just determining between these two films. I think we can say which film between the two deserved more. In this case, we both say Witness.
Yep.
Now I want to ask which of the Best Picture nominees deserve to win. Opening it up.
Then I say The Color Purple.
And I will also say The Color Purple. Easily.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one more level I want to go down to.
Oh, boy.
Which is, of any movie from 1985, which basically is your number one of the year, essentially.
Oh, my number one pick for 1985 is, without a doubt, Back to the Future, baby!
Very good.
I got to do it. I'm very happy.
Yeah. For me, I would say The Color Purple again. Either that, or I would say that Ran is a really great artistic achievement. So, one of those.
There you go.
So maybe we'll try that in the future.
Yeah,
I think that'd be interesting.
It's certainly a good thing to bring up because you're gonna be you're heading into the tail end of the 80s and heading into the 1970s.
Oh yeah,
which is certainly a big decade for film.
Yes,
great.
So that's it.
No,
right?
We're done.
Long episode, but we covered a lot of interesting stuff.
I think we had a good conversation.
Thank you for coming on with me again.
Thank you for having me back 33 years later.
Wow, you finally did it. I can't wait to see you for 1952.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's do this every 33 years.
I think so.
All right.
Where can people find you on the internet?
Well, if you want to find me, you can follow me on Twitter at Sebastian Gronback. That's SEBASGRONBACK. And I am, I think, on the same name on Letterboxd, where I post all of the things that I am watching. That's it.
Great. And you can find me on Twitter at Kevin_Jacobson. The podcast is at Oscar Runner Up, and it is on Apple Podcasts / iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play. Rate, review, subscribe. And now I will leave it up to you at home to decide whether you think that Out of Africa deserved Best Picture or if Witness should have taken it. And you can do that at my website at filmtrophies.com or email me at filmtrophies@gmail.com. So once again, thank you for coming on with me.
Thank you for having me.
And I will bid you all adieu.
Bye-bye.